Hey YouTube, welcome to the good, the bad and pure evil. How are you? Are you good? Hope Christmas went great and everything was good for New Year. As you can tell, I've got a new gadget. We'll see how it goes. For now, let's get into it. With a new year, let's start off with a good story today. And what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the legendary Marie Curie. So Marie, or Maria, won not one but two Nobel Prizes in her lifetime. She was born in Warsaw on November 7th, 1867. Her parents were teachers. Both families came from money issues through generations from their involvement in the Polish uprisings. These involvements affected not just her parents but also Maria too, meaning that she would have to work harder to get ahead of anyone of her time. Her father taught maths and physics, both of which Marie excelled in. He also was the director of two Warsaw secondary schools for boys. Russia at the time wanted more power, so they decided to take over Poland. Why not, I guess. Anyway, to take over, they removed all lab studies in schools. If you don't learn, you can't use it, right? But what her father wasn't going to have was he wasn't going to let his pupils down, so he secretly taught behind closed doors in his own home. Soon, though, the secret was out and he was fired by his Russian overseers. From then on, all he could do and all he could get was low-paying jobs. Add this with the losses in investments, the family was in big money troubles. To help the money issues, the family decided to rent out rooms to lodgers. One of these lodgers, though, had typhus, which is quite an infectious disease. And Marie's sister Sophia had gotten the disease and sadly died from it. Marie's mother was an excellent operator of a girls' school, but gave it up after having Marie. When Marie was just 10, tragedy hit again with the passing of her mother from TB. These close deaths and heartbreak had Marie question God, how he could allow such a tragedy. With these unanswered questions, she soon became agnostic. After this, she attended a boarding school and then a secondary school for girls. She graduated with a gold medal in 1883. Marie, though, suffered from a bout of depression and she spent a year recovering in the countryside with relatives. She returned to her father in Warsaw, where she began to tutor on the side. At the time, no women could attend college, but Marie and her sister did enroll in what was called a Flying University, which was a Polish patriotic institution that did allow women to attend. Okay, so before we go on, my Polish is pretty much nothing, so there's going to be a lot of Polish names and I'm going to try my best not to offend, so just bear with me. So money strapped, Marie and her sister came to agreement. Marie would help her sister with money while she did her medical studies, and in 2 years' time, her sister would then support Marie in her studies. To facilitate this, Maria took up tutoring to get more money. First, it was in Warsaw, and then it was in Stróżki for a well-off family, Soraski. They were related to Maria's father. So while working for them, Maria fell in love with their son, Kazimierz, who would later become a mathematician superstar. Now, Kazimierz's family they weren't exactly really loved up with the family, and they weren't really happy that they were in love. Not for the obvious related factor, not that at all. They didn't approve because Marie to them was too poor. Kazimierz, being the good son, decided to axe the relationship straight away with no fight. Tragically though, it was really sad, as it was known that years and years later, an old Kazimierz would be seen at a statue of Maria at the Radium Institute. He would appear deep in thought, as sorrowful, almost pining over the love that he once lost. Anyway, back in 1890, Maria's sister, remember the one that they made an agreement with? She married a Polish physician and activist. She invited Maria to join them in Paris, but Maria had to decline as she couldn't afford the university tuition. I guess the support agreement went out the window. So it took Maria another 18 months to get the money together, along with her father's help, as he was now in a better paid job. During the 18 months, she educated herself. She read books, wrote letters, even was tutored herself. Early 1889, she returned home and attended the Flying College. And in 1891, began her training in a lab which was run by a relative who was the assistant to the great periodic law creator Dmitri Mendeleev. In late 1891, Marie left Poland and went to France. At first, she stayed with her sister until she got her own place near the university. When I say her own place, it was a small room in an attic, but it still was hers, silver linings and all that. She enrolled in the University of Paris in 1891 and studied physics, chemistry, and maths. Marie studied by day and tutored at night, but the money barely covered her living. She would go without food, mainly due to being so deep into her studies. Come the winter time, she couldn't afford heat, so she would go about like the Michelin man, wearing as many clothes as she could to stay warm. But all this paid off, and in 1893 she was awarded a degree in physics. She went on to work in the Gabriel Lippmann Industry Lab. She continued a second degree on the side, which she got in 1894. Marie began her career with an investigation of magnetic properties of various steels, and it's here when Marie Curie enters her life. Marie was looking for a much bigger lab and needed more space, and Pierre was the instructor of the City of Paris Industrial Physics and Chemistry Higher Educational Institution, or ESPCI for short. Now, Marie and Pierre's relationship was purely professional and mutual interest. Nothing lovey-dovey about it. But from they grew closer and became more of a love interest. Pierre then eventually mustered up the courage and popped a question to Marie, which she actually declined. Before we judge, let me explain. Marie was contemplating whether or not to return to Poland. She didn't want to accept Pierre's offer and then end up breaking his heart. But Pierre wasn't letting Marie go. She would often be thought of as Pierre's biggest discovery, so he was willing to go with her even if it meant to be taking a lower position as a French teacher. In the summer of 1894, Marie returned alone to Warsaw. She visited friends and family and tried to get a job at the Krakow University, but was turned down because she was a woman. Lovely, right? So Pierre wrote to her and convinced her to return to Paris and complete her PhD. Marie did this, and in return, she then gave her support to Pierre, insisting he write up his research about magnetism, which he did and received his own doctorate in March 1895. Eventually, July 26, 1895, they married. Both were what you would call religious or traditional, so the service was a bit out there. Marie wore a dark blue outfit, which she continued to wear for many years after as a lab outfit, giving a whole new approach to something new, old and blue. Marie now had love, partnership and support in her life. So there's going to be a lot of dates, names and chemical references coming at you. Bear with me as it all goes to Marie's process. It begins in 1895 with Röntgen, who found the existence of X-rays, not the mechanisms behind their production, but that they existed. Next was Henri Becquerel. He came in 1896. He discovered that uranium salts emitted rays similar to X-rays in their penetrating power. And Henri showed that the uranium rays didn't need external energy sources to radiate, but came from the uranium itself. These two discoveries interested Maria greatly, so she decided for a thesis to look more into the uranium rays. Marie had an ace up her sleeve when it came to this investigation, mainly thanks to her husband. You see, Pierre and his brother created a version of the electrometer 15 years earlier. This device measured electric charge, so using it, Marie found the activity of uranium compounds were dependent on the quantity of the uranium. She theorized that the radiation was from the atom itself and not from the molecules. This was a very, very important step because it was a step in disproving that atoms were unbreakable. Her career didn't stall her personal life, and in 1897 her daughter Irene was born. Not to stand by while Pierre supported them, Maria took up a teaching job to help out. They weren't flush with money or well known yet, so they didn't have a dedicated lab. Instead, they had a converted shed next to the ESPCI. I mean, radiation and a shed to scream safety, right? The shed was an old medical room with a little or no ventilation. It wasn't waterproof, so when it rained, they knew about it. They wore no protection conducting their research. PPE wasn't all the rage back then, and to be fair, the dangers of radiation exposure wasn't known, so protection wasn't needed. The ESPCI sponsored Pierre but not Marie. However, she did get subsidies from metal and mining companies and even from various organisations and governments. Marie looked into two uranium minerals, pitchblende and tobernite. Using the electrometer, Marie was able to see that pitchblende was 4 times as active as uranium, and tobernite was twice as active. What she also found was that these two minerals contained small quantities of another substance that was far more active than uranium. So she looked into other substances that gave out radiation, and in 1898 she discovered thorium, which was radioactive. Her research fascinated Pierre, so much so that in 1898 he gave up what he was working on to come and join her. Support as always from Pierre. Marie knew the importance to publish fast, and in April 1898 she published her research on thorium discovery. But sadly she was beaten to the punch by Schmidt just 2 months earlier in Berlin. July 1898, Marie and Pierre published jointly about an element they called polonium, which was named after Marie's homeland, Poland. December the same year, they announced another element, radium, meaning ray in Latin, and during this research, they also coined the term radioactivity. So you have them to thank for if you ever have used that word. The Curies now set out to isolate polonium and radium in pure form. Years of attempting finally produced a result in 1902 when 1/10 of a gram of radium chloride was separated from 1 ton of pitchblende. 1/80 tenth. In 1910, Marie managed to isolate pure radium metal but never succeeded in isolating polonium. What they did achieve was publishing 32 scientific papers and announcing findings regarding effects using radium. They found if diseased tumour cells were exposed to radium, they were destroyed faster than healthy ones. A huge game changer and a vital even today in the fight against cancer. In 1900, Marie became the first woman at the École Normale Supérieure to become a faculty member. The same year, Pierre joined the faculty in the University of Paris. Sadly though, in 1902, Marie's father died, and in 1903, Marie got her doctorate. In June, both Marie and Pierre were asked to give a speech at the Royal Institute in London. Although both were invited to talk about radioactivity, only Pierre could speak because women, again, weren't allowed to do so. During this period, a new age of industry began with a base on radium. Although Marie and Pierre found radium's ability, they didn't patent the discovery. And because of this, they gained little, if any, benefit from the business boom. December 1903, the Royal Swedish Academy of Science awarded Pierre, Marie and Henry Becquerel the Nobel Prize in Physics. But there was a snag. Marie actually wasn't going to get the prize. The committee was only going to honour Pierre and Henri. A member of the committee, Magnus Augusta Mittag Leffler, didn't agree with this as he was a strong advocate for women scientists, so he slipped word to Pierre about this, and Pierre lodged a complaint. To keep all happy, Marie's name was added to the award, which made Marie the first woman to get a Nobel Prize. So when you win such a prize, you're to receive it in person. Polite thing to do. But the Curies declined due to being very busy, although it's been thought to be related to Marie's possible snub. It was also known Pierre wasn't great at talking with an audience, and actually became ill at the thoughts of it. After the award, they went on and had a second daughter in 1904. Marie hired a Polish tutor to teach the girls about Poland and the language. So when you're honoured with a Nobel Prize, you're expected to receive it in person, as I just said. And as I just said, they declined to. But you're also expected to give a lecture in relation to it. This lecture was not a back out of choice one. So in 1905, the Curies finally gave it. With a Nobel Prize comes money, which the Curies used to hire a lab assistant. Pierre became a wanted man, and the University of Geneva, they wanted him big time. So they offered him the golden egg of positions. Now the University of Paris weren't going to let a Nobel Prize winner tip on down the road to another university. So they gave him a counter offer, a professorship and the chair of physics, but no dedicated lab, which was odd considering what they just won. Anyway, before his award, Pierre had no leverage, but now, along with Geneva's interest, he was a hot commodity. So Paris gave in and built a brand new state-of-the-art, highly furnished lab. However, he had to wait until 1906 for it to be completed. 1906 should have been their year, an exciting and happy year for them, with the opening of the new lab, but tragedy was soon to strike. Pierre was walking in the pouring rain. He couldn't see 2 feet ahead of him. As he was crossing the Rue Dauphine, he was struck by a horse-drawn vehicle. Pierre was pulled straight under its wheels. He fractured his skull and was killed instantly. Marie was heartbroken. Out of respect, the physics department at the University of Paris decided that Pierre's chair would be offered to Marie. She accepted her prize and aimed to do her husband proud by creating a world-class lab. She was the first woman to become a professor at the university. She didn't stop there. Years later, Marie would head to the Radium Institute in the university. A radioactivity lab was created for her by the Pasteur Institute. The radioactivity lab idea came from Pierre-Paul Emile Roux, who was the director of the Pasteur Institute. He had enough of the university not providing Marie with a proper lab, so he created one and asked her to move to his institute. Once again, the University of Paris was at risk of losing a Nobel Prize winner, so to avoid having Marie leave, they created a joint initiative with the Pasteur Institute, calling the Curie Pavilion. In 1910 came the success that Marie isolated radium. She also defined an international standard for radioactivity emissions, which would be called the Curie. With all this fame, you'd think she'd be a superstar and loved by all, but this was far from the truth. The public of France did not like her at all. Some would even say they hated her. She wasn't French, and rumours circulated about her being Jew, which wasn't true. Years later, her daughter would claim that France was hypocritical towards her mother. If Marie was nominated for a French honour, they were disgusted, calling her an unworthy foreigner. But if Marie received a foreign order, such as the Nobel Prize, well then she was French, true and true, a complete French icon. Rumours about Marie were mostly untrue, but she was a bit scandalous. In 1911, it was found out that Marie was having an affair with Paul Langevin. Now, he was a former student of her husband, 5 years her junior, and was married, although estranged from his wife. When the press found out, they had a field day, with Marie being the villain of the story. Headlines described Marie as the foreign Jewish homewrecker. When the scandal broke, Marie was in Belgium and had no knowledge what was going on back home. When she did return, she was met by a mob outside her home, and they weren't what you'd call welcoming. So her daughters and her had to flee to a friend's home nearby. So in 1911, guess what? Another Nobel Prize. This time it was for chemistry, but her recent scandal was frowned upon by the chair of the Nobel Committee, Svante Arrhenius. He didn't want her to attend and tried to stop her by questioning her moral standings. Marie, she wasn't the type to step aside and wasn't going to be silenced, and she was going whether he liked it or not. She believed her life, her private life, had nothing to do with her scientific work. So I guess true on that, Svante. She was the first person to win or share 2 Nobel Prizes and remains alone with Linus Pauling as Nobel winners in 2 fields. Poland took notice and wanted her back, and a delegation of celebrated Polish men of learning encouraged her to come back and continue her research. She was even offered the directorship of a new lab, but she declined all offers. It wasn't out of disrespect. She wanted to focus on the Radium Institute and its development. After her second Nobel Prize, Marie managed to convince the French government to support the Radium Institute, where research for chemistry, physics, and medicine was conducted. But just a month after her prize, she was struck with depression and a kidney issue. Most of 1912 was she spent behind closed doors. She did, however, visit England and stayed with a friend named Herta Ayrton, After a 14-month break, she returned. Marie was then appointed to the director of the Curie lab in the Radium Institute of the University of Paris, which was founded in 1914. In 1914, World War I broke out, and Marie noticed a problem straight away. Wounded soldiers weren't being seen to quick enough. She came up with an idea of a radiological centre and having them near the front lines so the battlefield surgeons could use them and maybe avoid amputations, possibly saving limbs. After much research, she developed a mobile radiography unit, which she and others called Little Curies. Because of this idea and her extensive knowledge, she became director of the Red Cross Radiology Service Unit. She also set up France's first military radiological centre, which was up and running by late 1914. In the beginning, it was just Marie, a military doctor, and Marie's daughter Irina, who was just 17 at the time. Then Marie directed 20 mobile radiological vehicles and went on to set up another 200 radiological units of field hospitals, all in the first year of World War I. In 1915, Marie created hollow needles, and they contained radium emanation. This was a colourless radioactive gas given off by radium. It was used to sterilise infected tissue, and later it would be identified as radon. Marie also used her own supply of radium for this. It's believed that these X-ray units treated nearly 1 million wounded soldiers. During this time, Marie also halted all other projects she was on to focus solely on this. Despite all of this, Marie never ever was given a formal recognition from the French government. So, you're welcome, France. 1920 was the 25th anniversary of the discovery of radium. The French government established a payment for Marie, which was called a stipend, usually given to clergymen, teachers, and public officials. 1921, Marie did a tour in the US to raise funds for research on radium. She received a warm welcome and was even gifted 1 gram of radium by President Harding. The First Lady even praised Marie for her professionalism and support as a wife. So before she left, France wanted in on the hype. They offered Marie a Legion of Honour, which was the highest French order of merit, but Marie refused it. I guess she became aware of France using her and wasn't having any of it anymore. She also gave lectures and made appearances in Belgium, Brazil, Spain, and Czechoslovakia. With Marie at its reins, the Institute produced 4 more Nobel Prize winners, including her own daughter and son-in-law. The institution would go on to become one of 4 major radioactivity research labs. 1922, she became a member of the League of Nations. She remained on the committee until 1934 and contributed to the League like others such as Albert Einstein, Hendrik Lorentz, and Henry Bergson. In 1922, she wrote a biography about Pierre. In 1925, she went to Poland and laid foundations for the Warsaw Radium Institute. She did a second tour of the US in 1929 and was able to equip the Warsaw Institute with radium. The institute would open in 1932, and Marie made her sister its director. Now, all of these tours and appearances made no time for her own work, which was very upsetting to Marie. But on the other side, she was gaining resources and research that she would otherwise have not. In 1931, she was elected to the International Atomic Weights Committee, and in the same year, she was awarded the Cameron Prize for Therapeutics. Early 1934, Marie visited Poland for the very last time. On July 4, 1934, she died just aged 66 from aplastic anemia, which is believed to have been contracted from her long-term exposure to radiation, which caused damage to her bone marrow. The damage to radiation wasn't known at the time. There was no safety measures, nothing. Marie was known to carry test tubes of radioactive isotopes in her coat pockets. Marie even stored them at home in her desk and would remark how the desk drawers would glow in the dark. Marie also was exposed to x-rays in the field hospitals with no shields, as they weren't created by then. In 1995, 60 years on, Marie and her husband were honoured by their achievements. Their remains were moved to the Panthéon in Paris, but the remains were highly radioactive and had to be sealed in a lead-lined coffin before being buried again. Even her paperwork is highly radioactive and are deemed too dangerous to handle, and are kept in a lead-lined box. If you wish to read these, you must put on protective gear in order to do so. Marie was known to be blunt, honest, with a moderate lifestyle. In 1893, she was given a scholarship, but by 1897, Marie returned it all once she earned her own money. Her Nobel Prize money was given to friends, family, students, colleagues, you name it. She didn't patent her research regarding radium isolation, so all scientific communities could access it with no issues. Any gifts or awards were to be given to the institute she was associated with. Albert Einstein himself once remarked that Marie was probably the only person who could not be corrupted by fame. In her own words, we will end this with, "Have no fear of perfection, you'll never reach it." So did you like it? It was good, right? And I sound like an absolute robot, and I do apologise. This is something new, and this is something I'm going to try out for a while. If you liked it, hit like. If you want to keep up to date with the new ones, hit subscribe. The next one I am doing will be a badge, and it will be the Algiers motel incident, which is a horrific night that happened during the Detroit 1967 riots. So until next time, thanks for listening, and remember to hit like and subscribe. Thanks.